When we're trying to support somebody therapeutically that has hypothyroidism, it's really important to consider root cause. Now, intuitively, this makes a lot of sense, but it can get kind of complicated. So it's really important to have that in the back of your mind when you're looking through a case and talking with the client in front of you. For example, in North America, it's really common for individuals to have what we refer to as Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, which means they have an autoimmune form of the condition. Globally, the trend leans a little bit more towards iodine insufficiency or mineral deficiency as part of root cause for them. So when we're putting together a plan for a client, we actually have to think more about immune balancing and reduction of inflammation than we would in many other cases of hypothyroidism. Now, immune function in general has a huge impact on how the thyroid is functioning. It's really common when a person has chronic infection or even acute infection, but it's occurring in a very dramatic way, for the body to actually respond by dialing down thyroid function. And I always like to emphasize this to people as well, that the thyroid is going to respond to the needs of our body at that time. So it's really common for there to be a reduction in its functioning or a reduction in production of thyroid hormone or use of thyroid hormone when the body is trying to conserve energy. So it's oftentimes a protective mechanism, and this can be a really helpful way to reframe a person's symptomology to them, to really help support them and create a therapeutic environment that can be more positive over time for them. Another system that can be hugely important in terms of root cause for hypothyroidism is the digestive tract. Now, part of that is because if there's an autoimmune form of hypothyroidism going on, supporting the digestive tract is key because that's where most of our immune tissue actually lives. In addition to that, there's a saying I'm sure you're all familiar with, you are what you eat, when in reality it's actually you are what you can assimilate. So if there's digestive tract inflammation, very acute or frank digestive disease, that can really influence how well a person is able to absorb and assimilate nutrients. Nutritional insufficiency or nutritional deficiency is a really huge part of hypothyroidism for many people. For our thyroid hormone to be produced in the first place, we actually require iodine, as most people are aware. But to be able to activate thyroid hormone from inactive form to active form requires a number of different minerals, many of which people find it difficult to remain at adequate levels. An additional element of root cause for many people, at least many of the people in North America that I work with, is the stress response and emotional well-being. Now, it's really common for people that are experiencing hypothyroidism to have anxiety, depression, low mood that are actually symptoms and resulting from the hypothyroid state. But it's also really common for long-term stress response to actually contribute, again, to a dialing down of thyroid function as a protective mechanism, like what I spoke about earlier. When people experience stress, even low-grade stress for long periods of time, it's common for the adrenal glands to pump out excessive amounts of cortisol, which is a very important, essential hormone that our body produces. However, produced in excess, what it actually does is interrupt thyroid hormone function. So we have inactive thyroid hormone that's produced by our thyroid that needs to be activated to be used in the peripheral tissues. And cortisol actually takes activated thyroid hormone and turns it off, shuts it down, and we refer to that as reverse T3. So over the long term, people experiencing pretty significant life events, low-grade stress over a long period of time, with excessive production of cortisol, can actually experience the progression of hypothyroidism. And again, I always remind people that the body does this as a way to protect itself during times of extreme stress. Now, an additional part of root cause for many people is not only imbalance of thyroid hormone and cortisol, our stress hormone and our thyroid hormone, but also additional parts of the endocrine system. So a really common relationship that we see is insulin resistance, an imbalance of blood sugar, and it has a strong relationship to thyroid function. So any kind of metabolic interruption, which is what insulin resistance, diabetes actually is, will influence other endocrine parts of the endocrine system that will contribute to our entire metabolic apparatus over time. So when we're trying to think holistically to support somebody with hypothyroidism, you can see there's many different avenues that we have to consider when putting together the therapeutic plan. And that's really a challenge, but it's also part of the fun and really allows you to get to know your clients quite well.